the lineage of why I love music comes through this guy. Obviously, it comes from my parents, but it came from him because that dynamic, like we talked about a little earlier, like with brothers and stuff, is like he was the leader. He was the older one. He was doing all the stuff first. Mm-hmm. And so I followed with that love, and he was so like adamant with music. The deep bond that I have with him that came from obviously our brotherhood and our love for each other, but the music that bound us together all the way through our childhood, teen years, adulthood, parenthood, losses and going through the same things professionally, the losses and some of the high times that we've had, that we've shared together. Those are things that a lot of siblings don't get to share together. Yep. I think the arc of it is usually, you're close growing up, you leave home, gets separate, and you don't spend as much time with your siblings, Yeah. With us, that has happened to a degree, but music always brings us back together. And so it's been a huge blessing.
Sitting down with Aranda for Play It Loud was one of those kind of inevitable things, if you know anything about rock bands in Oklahoma. With Play It Loud, we go out and talk to artists who have stories to tell, some scars to prove it. For years now. And Aranda, they have it all. These were two brothers who came up in Oklahoma City at Northwest Classen, and they were making Weird Al Yankovic music parodies at 10 or 11, singing into toilet bowls for reverb until they joined up with another couple of brothers as bandmates. And they were still just kids when they got hooked up with Color Me Bad from a friend's recommendation. From there, they got a development deal. They'd ultimately end up getting signed with Tom and Mottola, go out west to follow their dreams. They've played on big stages, rubbed shoulders with the elite, had songs covered by Kelly Clarkson, toured with Three Doors Down and Daughtry, played with the All-American Rejects, and a list of big-time acts. The dream, man. They've touched it. They've lived it. An inspiration to every Oklahoma kid eyeing a guitar in a music store window. Sitting down with guys like this will teach you something. That's why I'm here.
He would record on the reel-to-reel, and I remember being a little kid going into their little room, my parents' little room, and he'd have it set up, and it's all messy. And I just remember the feeling of like Dad was doing something big down there. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know exactly. I knew they were singing all the time. There was always music in the house. And that rubbed off on us. But I remember thinking, Dad's doing something, big down there. It was something that, I don't quite understand, but I want to know what it was.
Right. As we started growing up from that point, our parents got divorced, and the one thing that we always had was each other, because wherever we would go live,
it was a little chaotic.
Yeah.
My parents were young when they had us anyway. They had suffered some pretty big losses. We had a brother and sister after us that my mom lost. And so they just suffered huge losses at a young age, and their marriage fell apart.
We were kind of moving around a little bit, different schools. And
were you all in Oklahoma places? Or were you all?
So we were in Oklahoma, and then we moved to Florida.
I remember being in North Carolina.
Okay, so you were about.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we always kind of leaned on was we started getting to this point where we're dreaming about like music and what could happen in music for us, like what could we say? And we were having these thoughts at 8, 9, 10 years old. But I remember too, we were visiting my mom for the summer, and Sweet Child of Mine and Welcome to the Jungle and all that stuff was big in that summer. I think that was like summer 87, 88, something like that. And I remember I was like, man, I want to play the guitar so bad. I'm tired of this tennis racket. But like a lot of people will be like, I got to go get the guitar the next day. No, in my brain, I was plotting out my whole future. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to get this guitar at Christmas. And by the time we get to next Christmas, I'm going to learn the guitar and know this much. And we're going to form a band and we're going to do this thing. And it's going to be amazing. And we had a couple guys down the street, Jay and Les, they were brothers. And they were in the same boat we were in. We were like, we just want to start this band, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, cool.
My dad started teaching us to play guitar, just to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
And I quit within. He was such a, like, prodigy is really the word, you know, at that age. He was just soaking everything up like a sponge. He was beating my dad, like, within a month and a half or
my
something.
dad was like, because we're always, you know, we're kids. We're like going through stuff. We want to skate. We want to do this. We want to do this. Well, he was thinking, man, this is just another fad. This is just another thing. And I remember telling Gabe, I was like, I'm gonna tear Dad up. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him.
Yeah.
You know? And so it was just kind of like a fun thing. And
one thing that that speaks to, that's something that I don't know where we learned this or got this. We're insanely competitive. You know, like even him telling that story, I know where that comes from. But it's just there's a competitive nature to both of us that fed into our music too, you know. I mean, we were never great athletes or anything.
Do you compete with one another, or is it the world?
Or with younger?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny too, like thinking about that and thinking about like where that came from. I think it came from not ever feeling like we were good enough. Like it always came from this place where it was like, man, the only way that we can survive is if we're the best. Like the only way we can survive in this world is if we're the best. Because we had just gone through so much stuff as far as just moving around all the time, and we'd make friends and then we'd leave and then we'd do all this stuff. And so it always felt like, man, we had to make an impression quick.
Right.
It's funny because I fight it sometimes. I'm like, man, it's not always a competition. It's not always a thing. And it's always just this psychological thing that you kind of made yourself do that. And so it's really good sometimes and it's really not healthy sometimes.
But I got the best of you and left behind the rest of you who used up your heart and kept you in the dark. And I know there's another side.
We were in high school. I think we were like in 9th or 10th grade
In Oklahoma.
in Oklahoma at Northwest Classen. And the band Color Me Bad, which they were like killing it. So we're hearing all about it because they graduated from Northwest Classen. And Northwest Classen was a really cool school because it's got some history, man. I mean, it's like, you know, Vince Gill's from there. You know, there's some music. There's a path of like people that was set forth. And we were like, oh, man, we can travel down this path.
That's
too.
huge.
You know what I mean?
Huge to see that, yeah.
It was awesome. So anyway, one of the guys in the group, his brother went to school with us, you know, and his name was Ernie Calderon. And man, Ernie Calderon.
You gotta say it like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember we were in the library something, and he goes, yeah, man, you heard my brother's new tune, man? I want to sex you up. Oh, shoot, man. You know, he goes, oh, man, they're big, man, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, man, you and your brother, man, you guys are good, man. He goes, man, I should get you a meeting with them, man. You know, he was just kind of throwing it around.
Right,
I need to get you. And I was like, man, that would be awesome, you know. So anything, you know, when you're 15 years old is, you're like, okay, cool. So I told Gabe, and they set up a meeting when they got home for Christmas off a tour that year with a guy, and his name is Sam Waters.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, we want you to come over, and
Sam and Mark being them.
That's extremely cool of them, by the way, to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
it was
that's
amazing.
actually really cool.
Yeah, and they were home, and they were throwing a big party. Their families would all get together, and they would do a big Christmas party at Mark's house.
Yeah.
And so they wanted us to come play at Mark's house in front of their whole family. So we were like,
Okay, cool.
okay, Mark Calderon, we will come over to your family's Christmas party.
You know. And I remember they loved us, and so this was the cool thing about being in high school, and we were able to go and do some shows with them on the road.
That's
It was amazing.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our social life got way better.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I get to date this girl now.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing.
That's huge.
Yeah.
We are on the highest horse you can possibly be
Right.
for 15 and 14. I mean, we're just like sitting there going, we did it already? this is amazing. You know what I mean?
did it. We just don't
but
have
I just
money.
remember we'd get up there, you know, and we'd strum one chord, and people would be like, ah! And you'd just be like, that's crazy. You want a little bit more of that? You know, you want a little,
You
bit,
want a
more,
little bit more.
you know, whatever. But you would see the reaction. That, at that young of age,
That's what it was.
can be a little bit unhealthy in some ways.
Right.
Because it then becomes your identity. When I do this, people go crazy.
Right.
People actually like me. People actually, those things. And so we were getting a lot of that at that time.
And during that time, Sam and those guys had kind of made a commitment to us that they were going to help us.
Yeah.
They were going
it
to
was like
continue to help
a
us.
development deal is what they called it. So
We were encouraged, and you know what I mean? Like, at that point, now your drive is 100% because you see the avenue now.
and we're teenagers, and we're getting like we had a meeting with Virgin Records, and so we get in there, and we're thinking, because Sam and Mark, they're like, man, you guys are gonna get in there and kill it, you know. So we get in there and we're playing our thing and all that stuff, and it was the first time we'd just gotten like not great feedback. You know what I mean? Like, one was like, that guy really can't play the guitar that good. That was one of the things. Man, it just sounds the same. We don't like this, whatever. That's pretty deflating after you've been on stage and you're doing this,
Right.
and people are going, yes, and then these guys are going, these guys don't got it.
Right.
They just don't got it.
We are the enemy. If you step across to my side, you better come with an army. We are the enemy.
Our first trip up to New York was in 1999, and we met with one of the guys from Epic, and his name was David Massey. They knew him. They were like, we're going to get you in front of him. He seemed to really like it, you know, and then he brought in a lady. Her name was Polly Anthony. She wanted us to do a development deal, and I think Sam was not really into that. Also, she wanted our name to be Gamian, and it was like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, that was a serious thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, I will say this: we were a lot less mature as far as like.
Yeah.
So at that time, you don't want to say no to anybody. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so we're trying to look like we're entertaining this idea. Yeah, well, you know, I've never thought of it like that before. Game in. No one's ever thought of that before. Like,
What about Dabe?
yeah. Whoa, you're blowing my mind here. The creativity is flowing so hard.
Yeah. So we end up going back to Oklahoma, and we're like, man, let's just do it again here in a few months, and we'll figure it out.
Let's keep shopping.
Let's keep shopping.
Sam was like, you guys are ready to get a deal, like the development, because they felt like they had done the development with us.
Right.
And so he didn't want to go there. He felt like we were ready.
So he was like, this time I'm going past those guys, and I'm going to Tommy Mottola. So Tommy Mottola was the head of, you know, he's married to Mariah Carey, I think at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like,
Yeah,
this was the
this is
biggest
huge, right.
guy, you know. So to us to even be in his presence and getting this opportunity, we thought when we got done, we thought, we did it. We freaking did it. Like, this, we're getting signed.
We did get signed.
Yeah, I know. I'm building.
And we did get signed, and so we were like, well, man, the hard part's over, right? Like, this is cool. I remember when we found out the news that we actually did get signed, we were in New York, and I mean, we ran outside. It was like I would say it was probably like if you were looking
The
at
most euphoric,
scene, and we're hugging each other. We're like, yes, man. Because it felt, we were really young still,
Yeah.
but it felt like we had already been at it for 15 years,
Right.
which we kind of had been,
Right.
you know? And we were just like, this is amazing. So man, now it's time to go move out to San Francisco, record this album, put it out, and blow up. That's the plan.
That's the plan.
That's the plan, you know? Man, it didn't quite work out like that. It was,
Well, part of it did.
well, the moving.
We did move. So there's that.
You got it all worked out, just a little too late. You took the long way down when you pushed me away. I said you're gonna
I think there was a little bit of a let off the gas just because we had just signed a deal with Tommy Mottola.
Right.
And so there was a sense that, oh man, I think the hard part's over. Like, as far as like where we want to get, because we we always felt like we could write good songs and that we were always going to be motivated to do those things. It was always like but how do you get those out? Now we felt like we had the machine was going to be behind us. And
it was also a different route for us because we were coming from the sense of, well, you got to tour, you got to play all the time. We're kind of more in that rock sensibility, whereas this was kind of steering a little bit more rock pop. And it was like, no, you don't have to tour 11 months out of the year. We're going to make you guys through radio, through video, through all these things. So that was more the plan. So it was different for us. So we felt, I don't know, sometimes kind of bad sometimes because we were just like, man, are we just sitting around? You know, we would sit there and write, but is this going to be kind of a long-term thing? But we were hoping that we were going to get to that next thing. So what ended up starting to happen after that is the money started running out on our advance. And every day it would just be like, man, just hold on. It's gonna happen. No big deal. Well, weeks became months, and then months became over a year, and then we're a year and a half into this thing, and finally we got these 6 or 7 songs, and we're gonna go back up to New York, and we're gonna perform them for the whole company.
It's like we're gonna get now. At this point, it's time to bring in the marketing people, everybody that's gonna work the record, stylists, etc. We need you to come do another showcase for them. And Tommy was there, and Polly, everybody was there. We knew we had to be on. This was felt like the last kind of hurdle where it was like, it's all going to start rolling after this. So we do this amazing performance, and everything was just great. We felt like what it felt like was like we did the best absolutely that we possibly could have done. There were no regrets leaving that. Yeah.
So we get back to San Francisco, and the feedback from Polly Anthony is, man, they weren't really.
She said she sent out a survey. Basically telling him, sent out the survey, nobody really liked it. The stylists don't have any idea what to do with these guys. And so Sam goes, so where does that leave us? And she's like, nowhere. And he was like, what do you mean nowhere? And she's like, it's done. And so, of course, we didn't say anything on the line, but after we're like, well, what does that mean? We're done. And he goes, you're getting dropped. It's over, with them.
With them, yeah.
Woo! Which felt like it was over with everything, though. You know what I mean? In the moment, You're just like,
that's a wrecking ball.
Can't believe this is happening.
So, man, we go from record deal, all this stuff,
to a clear path, of what we're doing.
I'm working at an amusement park at Muir Woods serving hot dogs. They got a little hot dog thing on my head, and it was very sobering.
I can't beat this losing streak. It's my one-track mind that makes me weak.
Yeah, so we had done this was the 405 sessions, right? With an engineer, Craig Alvin. We got done with it, and it was just for us. It was just for us to put out and kind of stay connected and reconnect with our audience here in Oklahoma City. And Craig went off and was working with some other bands and got connected with this guy that had started a label. Had a couple bands and Craig was working with, and actually had asked Craig if he knew any bands that would be interested, that he thought were good enough to sign to another label. So long story short, this guy, Adam DeGrade, and he calls me up and he's like, hey dude, he's up from Rhode Island, so it's like, dude, he's like, I heard you guys' music, and he's very matter of fact, and like, he doesn't beat around the bush with anything. And Adam's like, yeah, I started a label, I want you guys on it. It's like, I'm literally in my construction clothes, I'm it's a different life, totally different life. And my first instinct is to like hang up because I'm still wounded.
Right.
The whole thing and with Sony had taken it out of me for a few years. I just didn't want to have anything to do with the business, the music business. Like, and I told him, I was like, well, that band, we're not together anymore. He's like, well, would you be interested in doing something, putting a band together and doing your own thing? And I was like, sure. I was like, yeah, I'm interested. I said, I'd rather do it with my brother, And, it was just a real casual conversation. He's like, well, call him up. So literally, I hung up the phone and I called D, and I think you were in Cali.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, you won't believe this, but I just got off the phone in a conversation with this guy, and he's offering, he's just offering to really let us do our own thing, write this record you want, produce it how you want it. I'll help you get the production and work with the people that you want to work with. In kind of a flash, we're like back in this like, oh no, we're getting signed again, and so there's a little trepidation, just because, man, you don't want to get hurt again, that's part of it, and you want to make sure you're not wasting your time, because there was a part of that where you felt a little bit like that in that moment. I don't feel like that now at all. I feel like that was we've talked about, such a great learning moment. But in that time, you're just like, man, I just wasted a couple of years of my life,
Right. So then it's time to record a record, and this was the record that ended up being our debut record. All these years later, this was the actual debut. So we finished this record, and we get probably a year out now that it hadn't been put out. It's just sitting there. So we wait and wait. Finally, we put together this CD release party out at the Diamond Ballroom. That day, we met our manager, who basically was like, man, I would love to further you guys' career a little bit more.
So that's when Ronnie kind of came in. Was it after we performed?
Yep.
Was it?
And the thing was that's when everything changed. Like, for us, it's like, cool, we have a direction. And basically it was like, man, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you guys get tours, and I'm going to get you guys on the radio. Then that started kind of going into this cycle where now, man, we were releasing singles, and all these singles were on the radio. They were just getting on the radio, and they were charting on the Billboard chart. They were charting, and we're just like...
And we were just playing.
And we were just playing.
I
mean, we were road warriors. From about 2008 to 12, I mean, all we did, man, was just tour and play and do all that stuff. So it was getting to this point where it was just like, oh, we are living our dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We weren't getting rich. There was none of that. But we were, again, just enjoying the journey.
3 seconds from a heart attack, and he just got paid. Soul turns from blue to black, turning down the pain. At the end of resistance, needle in his vein. 3 seconds from a heart attack, there's no one left to blame.
Should you sit down and write what it means to have your dreams come true? That's what they lived. But the thing that stuck with me after spending a day of hearing stories, sharing laughs with the brothers Aranda, wasn't so much the highs of their journey, and there were many of those. There have been the victories and spotlights and the we made it's, the hits on the rock charts and cheers from the crowds. Those are woven in the story, enough to call them a success, enough to be one. But what struck me, what stuck around, were the lows, the losses, the heartaches, and how they've kept going. How they're still here side by side. How they've earned the lessons and wars they fought together. How it's all made them stronger.
In the beginning, we didn't have, just like anybody, you didn't have as many responsibilities. I was married, but I didn't have any kids. At this point, I had 3 kids. I had a business back here at home that you're trying to run while you're doing music, because you have to make the money to support the family so that you can go do the thing that makes you passionate. And so at this point, we were both trying to hold down jobs.
The label was like, man, go, go, go. Keep going, keep going. Man, at that time, I had just had my 3rd kid, and then I was starting to have some difficulty with my voice a little bit. Like, I would come in and I'd just be like, man, something's not quite right. I didn't know what it was, but it was still functioning. We were getting through it. But, man, we started just hitting it hard relentlessly, and I was doing stuff here at home, going back on the road, doing all that, just singing.
And, so we just thought, he's going to be fine. We'll get him some rest here and there. But he just wasn't able to find rest, because he was flying home while we were touring, because he was holding down this job at Life Church and was doing multiple services on the weekends. And then he'd fly back out to wherever we were on the road, and we'd tour during the week.
It was madness. Like, it was really and I think you're always thinking, I can do it, no big deal. As long as I'm awake, I can get in there and get it done. And honestly, what ended up happening is my voice didn't just go away, it broke.
It broke.
It just broke. This is what I have done my whole life.
Right.
This is what's provided for me, provided for my family. Just this is a huge part of it.
It's
you
your
know?
identity.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. It was like my identity.
Yeah.
And so when you completely lose your identity and it breaks, then you're like, who am I? And I had to sit there and really look at myself and go, who am I without this?
I mean, that's got to affect, not to get all Dr. Phil about it, but that's got to affect your self-worth. Like, what am I without this? Who am I without this?
We
Nothing.
completely,
I'm nothing.
That's exactly right. We completely shut it down too after that. Like everything just kind of came together in that. I mean, it was a lot of this, but it was also it was just a lot. And so,
And that was, I think, for both of us, something big. That was just, we knew we had sacrificed a lot of time with our kids and stuff growing up. We did the best that we could, but there were, like I know I missed one of my sons, first day of school. Like you don't get that back.
Right.
And that started, I think, as we were getting older and just, more into this journey, we're feeling those shots more. In the beginning, it's like we're taking it for the team because there's a bigger, brighter future, and financially this is going to help our family, and things are going to happen. And then so it came at a great time, for us to kind of shut it down a little bit, and we just wanted to. I just wanted to go to soccer games, my kids' soccer games and stuff, and so. Same with you, I'm sure. It's just like you just wanted to do the regular stuff, that you didn't get a chance to do as much of. And so that's what we tried to do, and still are doing that,
The brothers shared stories about the road, about the hardships of holding together their families, of trying to make it through the storms of dream chasing. But they've weathered those. Came out on the other side with some tough shoulders and a way to turn the pain into something else. They're both family men now with other jobs and wives and responsibilities. But they're still playing, still dreaming, still putting out albums and aiming big. The conversation shifted a bit when we got to 2019. In February, they got a call that their father, a huge influence to both, had passed away. They were together in the studio at the time. Not a month later, their dear friend and drummer for some 15 years, Mike Walker, tragically died along with his wife. Years later, their hurt is still fresh.
There would have been no way that we would have gotten that news together had we not been at the studio, and we hadn't been at the studio for weeks. And so we always look at it as a divine appointment, so to speak, like we were meant to be together on that day to hear that. Because I think God knows, like, it'd have been really tough to take that without having him there and me there, even just to look at and go, okay, we're okay. We're okay. We're going to get through this.
3 weeks later, I get a phone call from Gabe. I'm back at the studio, and I'm dreaming again. I'm thinking, okay, we could do this thing. And then our drummer for the past 15 years, him and his wife tragically pass away. And man, at that point, it was like, what is going on?
Right.
Like, it just felt like we were just getting this news all the time. And Mike was just such a dear friend. I mean, he was just
an incredible human being and had become just a great friend, to us.
great friend.
Well, it's like we talked about earlier, like the people that are with you on the road, the hard times. It's not about comfort and dinner somewhere that's nice and then you go home. It's the people that are hanging with you at 3 a.m. when you're tired.
There's a
You're lifting
camaraderie there
You're
that's
lifting
built.
each other up. Yeah.
Sharing
Yeah.
a lot of details in your life. You just open up,
You see people at their worst, you know what I mean? And then you see people at their best because of that.
Yeah,
So.
and you see people, what they have to deal with at home, like what they're trying to navigate at home just to keep that dream and that pursuit alive. You really earn a real respect. And I have so much respect for other musicians that are out there doing it, young and older, because it's a grind, and it's like, man, you have to give up a lot and you have to navigate a lot, and you've got to have a mind that's very resilient, because...
So we ended up
what
stopping
happened?
for a little while and then getting back really into it. And obviously we get into the pandemic and all of that crazy stuff. So you get into all that. But man, creatively just in a good spot. Like my brain was kind of just like, man, I'm just gonna write, and just do stuff. I just was like, man, we're going to do this. We're going to make a record, and it's going to be painting of like all the stuff that's happened in the last few years to us. And not only just stuff that's happened to us, but it's more like connecting all these stories plus all the stuff that's happened in the world. This record is going to be an amazing form of expression for us. So we're hoping that people can connect with it the way that it was intended. And the way that it's intended is to be just an overall picture of not only our lives, but everybody's lives. You know what I mean? Like just everybody that we've kind of experienced with. It's like touching all that.
I got one more shot, I'm the underdog, up against the world, gonna prove I'm wrong. Oh, you can tell me.
Well, let me interject right there, because you were talking about being hard on yourselves. Are you guys hard on each other?
I'm definitely not as hard on him as I would be myself. But I would say that I do have an expectation, you know.
Sure.
But I don't ever get mad if he doesn't meet it.
Yeah, we're not definitely. I would say definitely not as hard on each other. But I think because we both recognize that we hold ourselves to a high standard, and I respect him a lot. You know, and I imagine. Come on, you respect me. I imagine he would reciprocate.
Yes. Right.
So you know, it's like I don't have to be hard on him. I know him.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about being a brother. I know this guy more than I know anybody else, you know, and I've lived with my wife for more time than I lived with him, but there's a genetic bond, everything that's there, you know, what they talk about, and it's like, I know what's going through his mind, you know, even when he thinks I don't, probably, and vice versa, you know, and so we're not hard on each other because we already know we beat ourselves up more.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
You guys have seen so many ups and downs creatively. You've established yourself. You've built a legacy, truly. Give me some sort of advice that you might give to a young musician starting out, or to someone looking to quit.
If you're really thinking about the notion of making it, you know, I think that's very subjective. And I think, you know, for most people in general, making it is different for every single person. So I wouldn't concentrate as much on that. I would enjoy the journey and not worry about the destination so much. Music is art, you know what I mean? Enjoy the moment, you know? If you go to a gig and there's 3 people there, man, enjoy it, you know what I mean? If you go to a gig and there's 5 million people there, enjoy it. It really is just that journey. And the journey we've had, I mean, where we are now, we didn't go off and make millions of dollars making music, but the stories and the camaraderie and the love through that journey, that's the only thing that matters. It's about love, it's about music, it's about connecting.
Yeah. You know, when I've talked to younger musicians and people, they ask you, you know, like, how did you guys do it? And how do you stay together this long? And obviously the first thing I tell them is, well, we're brothers, so that helps. You know what I mean? But it's like my advice is always like, find guys that you want to hang out with. Because if you're not together long enough to get good, then what's the point? You know, like if there's all kinds of infighting and stuff. So you got to be together long enough to create chemistry and create great songs and all that stuff. And if you're not together long enough for that, it'll never happen. So what's the point? Yeah. So it's like, you know, it's like he said, it's about camaraderie and love and relationships with people.
So what did I learn from Aranda? I learned it's not just where you go, how far it takes you, how it all plays out when your talent and grit and sacrifice square up against the cynical world and all the odds that might see you fall.
You know I don't understand.
Yeah, it's about those things, sure.
'Cause in your dark,
But it's something else.
I can see the light.
So what did I carry with me from that day with Damien and Gabe? 2 talented brothers who've seen all the highs and carried each other through the lows. I think Damien said it best. The one thing we always had was each other. That's what I learned. And that's what I'm sharing with you. It ain't so much what's at the end of the road. What matters is who's walking beside you on the journey.